The Celtics Talk podcast is presented by 24autogroup.com, 11 locations across New England.
What's up, everybody? Off day edition of the Celtics Talk podcast here on the NBC Sports Boston podcast network. Coming to you after the Celtics lose consecutive games for the first time in 4 months. All the good that was happening at the start of the week, out the window. It's doom and gloom. Joe Tomase, I'm not here for you to pile on or whatever, but I think you had some reasonable takes after this game, and you expressed some consternation about this team. Just start big picture. How you feeling after what you saw this week?
Yeah, so I mean, big picture is like, yes, they are the quote unquote best team in the NBA, and we can keep saying that, and maybe at some point we will believe it. The problem is we know what we're looking for is what are they going to do April, May, and hopefully June. And the last two games are really, in a nutshell, the kind of things that have cost them in postseasons, really since the Jays got here. The Cleveland game, obviously winnable game. You're up 20 with 9 minutes left. You blow that game. How many times have we seen in the playoffs? Celtics, big lead. I mean, Miami in the bubble, it was like pretty much every game. Blow it, lose, now you put yourself in a hole. Then last night's game, you're looking at a team that obviously has just won a title, is a true contender, knows how to win a close game, and what happens? Their star delivers, Celtics star does not. And so here we are with all of the same doubts, and I've heard you do this on the post-game show and on Early Edition, and it's so true. It's like you want to believe that they've changed, but there's just enough that the doubt has to be there. I mean, you'd have to be truly wearing the Felger, green glasses and all of that stuff to not be at least a little bit concerned about what all this means for June.
And I think you put it nicely. There's probably nothing they can do over the next 20 games that's going to change your mind, right? Like there's a couple of games against the Bucks that will be good little barometers along the way. But if they come out and take down the Blazers, like, okay, like they win a close game against Utah. So I think that's going to be the frustrating part is we're really not going to be able to sort of check back on this. Maybe not until the biggest stage of all, because, we'll see what happens with the early rounds of the playoffs. But I do agree. It's just sort of PTSD here where you thought they had turned a little bit of a corner, but then, okay, late game execution wasn't great the other night, blowing a big lead when they'd been so good about playing with a lead. And then in Denver, where it's just a little bit of everything, the turnovers early, the late buzzer beaters when they put such an emphasis on being good at the close of quarters, and then just Tatum being kind of fading. So I guess let's dive into it. Like Tatum's going to be the big story. I don't want to spend too much time because it's just he's going to get crushed, and you look at the numbers and it's understandable. Now his playoff numbers are better. How are you feeling about Jayson Tatum as we look ahead to the playoffs? So do you say as long as he does it on the big stage, I'm okay with it? Or is this like a growing, legitimate, maybe he's just not clutching those moments?
Yeah, I mean, it's some good, some bad. It's hard to say that a guy who drops 50 in a winner-take-all game doesn't bring it. I mean, I have a problem with that. And he had a monster game against Milwaukee the year they went to the finals. He had the great game one of the finals against Golden State where he doesn't score at all, but he's dishing out assists, and the Celtics win because of the way he moved the ball. So there are things I like about what Tatum has done this year. He is a willing facilitator. All of that said, the late game stuff you can't ignore. You wrote it, 19 dribbles at the end of that Cleveland game to set up what? The Kobe fall away that we've seen him miss against Detroit and Minnesota, and go down the list. He seriously missed that shot at the end of games like 5 times this year, it feels like. He's 1 for 7 in those situations, so we know that's bad. The other problem is the Tatum we saw last night, which is the sort of listless, disengaged, mopey. And he gets like that every once in a while, and it's like Jaylen Brown doesn't really get like that. Jaylen Brown, he couldn't make a free throw, but otherwise, he brought it last night, right from the beginning, and he was treating that game, and Jokic, both of them were treating that game like a finals preview. And then you see Tatum, he's missing layups. He only took 13 shots. That's really, I mean, he took 13 against Golden State, but they won by 52. Yeah. The last time he had that few was the blowout loss to the Bucks when I think he took like 5 or 6. But for Tatum to only take 13 shots in a game like that, I'm sorry, Joe Mazzulla. I can't simply say, oh, he was taking what the game gave him. Jaylen Brown made the game come to, he made the Nuggets react to what he did. And Tatum, there was just too much passivity. And then at the end, I know I'm rambling, but at the end, he has the one shot to make it all go away. And if he makes that one, what are we talking about today? We're saying, you know what? Tatum was struggling all night, but when it mattered, he knocked it down, and it's wide open. It was right there for him. Clang.
It's so many things about that last possession. I mean, Jaylen just going full bully ball to get that turnover was like, it's just an amazing moment on a night that he was fantastic. And you're thinking, here we go. And Tatum, like, even the lob was a little bit off. If he just put it in a different spot, maybe Jaylen's able to go up and over Jokic and really cap the night. At least you're tied at that point. You still end up with a great shot because Derek White appears out of nowhere, and as he always does, makes the right play. I'm with you. Like, you can't come away empty in that possession. I mean, I don't know if you got to chase the rebound, whatever you got to do, but like, the basketball gods, I don't understand. Like, that felt like the moment that you usually get rewarded and everything finds its water finds its level. But yeah, it's baffling a little bit how Tatum has these nights where I thought last night he would be super engaged. Okay, he hears all the noise from the Cleveland game and comes in and just like channels what we know he can be. I knew he wouldn't push too hard in the notion of Jokic is over there, I want to be MVP too, even though that would have been part of the conversation. He just didn't handle the double teams good. I mean, sloppy turnovers, 5 in the first half. Just
the 2-on-1 with Drew Holiday late in the game, where it's like an engaged Jayson Tatum in normal Jayson Tatum mode dunks that. He's not trying to skim a bounce pass by a defender. He's like, stop me, And that was frustrating to watch. I think the one thing I will say positively, just to interject for a second, you have Holiday making a couple of huge threes. Like, he's become the master of the contested corner three. Forget about the open ones. So he answers the bell late. Brown answered the bell late. Porzingis answered the bell late. So I do think they have Derek White didn't have a great game, but they have options at least. And to bring this back to Tatum, I wonder, and I'm going to run this by you. Ooh. So the criticism at the end of the Cleveland game is you're trying to do it all yourself. 19 dribbles, like you said. You can involve teammates, and Jaylen Brown sort of intimated, I should be involved in these plays too, which he should. And I wonder if Tatum took that as sort of like they don't want me to have the ball, not the players, but everybody. I need to give it up more, so I'm going to go into this game with the mindset of giving it up, and then he just lost that aggressiveness.
It's interesting. He just has those moments. Like, it's so weird. Like, usually when he goes scoreless in the first quarter, doesn't take a lot of shots. Like, I feel like that's a normal Tatum night. He's letting Jaylen get going. He's trying to get everybody else involved, and he's going to pick his spots. Last night, he made a couple early threes, and I said, ooh, this sort of has the feeling of a night where he's really cooking. Like, he's got it going early. And then to your point where I think he took 3 shots in the middle quarters, and that's the point where the game was getting away. That's when you need to at least kind of like hang around, and it got to 10 or 12 at that point. And so, yeah, it was a little surprising that he was as deferential. Now, they were blitzing him and trying to force the ball out of his hands. And I think, maybe the turnovers got him in his own head a little bit, and now you're overthinking everything. So I didn't love that part of it. But yeah, I guess I'm surprised overall that he wasn't coming off that game and having to hear the noise. That I just thought that was going to be like laser focused Tatum. And I don't know why necessarily. Now, on the positive spin I would put would be like Jaylen. He knew Jaylen had it going. He was going to make sure Jaylen touch the ball. The late game situation thing, it's so funny. This is what my mind keeps racing back to. Remember, Joe gets the job last year. They run the same play probably 20 times where it was Tatum in the backcourt, head of steam out of a timeout, got good looks every time, and he actually hit a few game winners down in Philly. I think there was another one along the way. And we started kind of like chiding Joe and being like, is this the only play you're going to run? And what we've come to learn is that if something works, not going to go away from it. Maybe they got to go back to that. Maybe we scared Joe off because we were so critical of like, oh, he doesn't have any other plays. I need Joe to be willing to call a timeout in that situation. I need Tatum to get the ball with a head of steam and not be taking the air out of the ball and allowing a defense to get set. And he's just got to start making some of those shots. And I am more encouraged. I think he's shooting something like 50% on those crunch time shots in the playoffs, which is, encouraging, but down to like 27, 26% in the regular season. And I just can't put my finger on, besides the fact that it's a low percentage shot for most guys. You're typically dribbling into a, like Paul Pierce, was an outlier in terms of he made it a little bit more frequently, but most guys are in that 30% range and defenses are all over you. I don't know. I don't know how to put to properly contextualize it. It's just weird that he wasn't a little bit more locked in that game.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me the late game Tatum thing is maybe he is taking too much on himself, or he definitely is taking too much on himself. The idea of, I'm the alpha, this is my team, I'm the all NBA guy, I have to go win this game. And that's really not how the Celtics win when they're at their best. When they're at their best, it's moving the ball, it's maybe Derek White's open or Holiday. You have a lot of Al Horford. There are a lot of guys you can trust to take that shot if they're open. And the problem is, as soon as those last second plays start, whether it's 5 seconds or 20 seconds, what is the Celtics offense? It's 4 guys just standing. No one is moving. They're all just clearing out for Tatum. And at this point, we should kind of know how that's going to end. Whereas I always go back to the Nets game, in the playoffs, game 1 of their finals run. How does that game end? No timeout. Every single guy touches the ball. Jaylen Brown passes up a potential game-winning shot. Marcus Smart, of all people, is open for a second, passes it up, splits a double team, finds Tatum, 360 layup, game over, and they are off to the races. That's what I would like to see. That's an extreme example, but I would like to see the Celtics actually run a play, run an offensive set rather than clear, pound, fall away. Like the fall away he missed against the Nuggets in Boston, same kind of thing. Yeah. It's just like you can get better shots than that because you have really good teammates on the floor.
So here's the interesting conundrum to me. So Joe Mazzulla, with his philosophies about the game, he loves pressure situations. You've probably read some of the stories about his Taekwondo training and likes getting put into tap out holds and trying to figure out a way out and not panicking and regulating your breathing in that moment. And there is something to the notion that you're not always going to have a timeout. Your team has to be able to play poised. I think the frustrating thing when I come from a fan perspective is it keeps happening, right? It's just why, even if you want to put your team in that situation, how come they are not better equipped in that moment to know what to do? Specifically the Cleveland game where, 19 seconds, shouldn't you have something? Didn't you run something in practice that you go to? Tatum needs to be more aware of the clock, obviously, but just getting into a set, doing something that, and where you're coming from, that is the maddening part to me. So, if your players don't know to do that, or just for whatever reason, freeze in the moment, that's when I need Joe, as much as it goes against his philosophy, to then step in. And so I just think there's a balance there where you want to be true to what you believe in and authentic and all that, but you got to save your players from yourself. Your job is to, put them in the best position to win. And the other part that's crazy to me is I think Mazzulla was leading the NBA in points out of a timeout, which probably shouldn't be a surprise. Celtics have a ton of offensive talent. They usually do good things. Last night was not a banner night. They had some turnovers out of ATOs and, but I would rather he put them in a position to draw up a play than to just kind of let them fight through it. Because at some point you got to win one of these. Because I think that's going to be more beneficial to you than necessarily going through the adversity of not having the timeout.
Oh, totally. And think about it too. I mean, just anecdotally, it certainly feels like Mazzulla leads the NBA in timeouts while your team has the ball in the middle of an offensive possession, and suddenly he doesn't like something he sees and he's calling timeout. It's like, where is that instinct when the clock is ticking down? And I know I didn't notice it on the broadcast, but people said after the game, he was trying to call timeout with 4 seconds left. Well, what good is that going to do? Now you're just setting yourself up for a desperation. It's going to be the same shot. Just with 4 seconds left when you had plenty of time. And the irony of all this is if Tatum just releases that shot a second sooner and doesn't put himself in that gray area, foul, not foul, there's a tip-in and they win the game. And you'd think they would take the lesson from Miami last year with Marcus Smart getting that shot up as fast as possible, even though low percentage, fall away 3, whatever, he gave Derek White time to go lay it in. They don't, that's such a basic thing late in game. It's, they play the 2-for-1 game as well as anyone in the league at the end of quarters. And then at the end of games, they lose sight of, hey, possessions matter here. If we miss this and there's time and we foul, we're still going to get another possession. And that's the kind of thing that's just so frustrating to watch because it's game after game in this situation and it's always the same. To go back to what you said about Mazzulla And if you've seen, see it enough, why not change it? It's like, it would be one thing if they were trying different things and getting the same result. They're trying the same thing and getting the same result. So it's like, you got to mix it up. Come on. I'm such an expert.
Have you seen a week where the polarizing swing of how a nation views a team has shifted so dramatically from Sunday when I think like the nation was getting ready for duck boats and planning the parade to Tuesday night, like sort of everyone looks up and goes, not a great look, losing a big lead. Maybe we're jumping the gun on this too. I mean, I got people thinking like, oh, there's no way they're beating the Denver Nuggets. I guess here's where I land. Like, while I'm frustrated that the team was not better in both situations and did not do what they've done most of the season and avenge the losses and play better, like I still can't get my mind off a Celtics Nuggets finals. I look at the West now with Karl Anthony Towns going down. I look in the East and I say no one has shown themselves against the Celtics to be on their level, and things will definitely be a little bit more difficult in the playoffs. The Bucks will take it up a level. The Knicks, if they get healthy, can be physical. There's going to be hindrances to it. But am I crazy to think that it's still steamrolling towards Celtics and Nuggets?
Not at all. And the thing is, you look at the Nuggets, I don't want to say they're a two-man team because that's not quite true, but really it's Murray, it's Jokic. And then all the other guys, okay, so you have Aaron Gordon, who is kind of their bigger version of Drew Holiday. He does a lot of little things. He'll clean up junk. Certainly a winning player. But it's like, Christian Brown, you know, Caldwell Pope. You start going down the list, even Michael Porter. You go through the list of these guys, and you're like, they're okay, but I don't think they have the depth that the Celtics have, even in their starting five. And as poorly as the Celtics played last night, they did have a chance with a minute left to win that, or at least take the lead in that game. And so it's like, if both of these teams play to the top of their ability, I feel like the Celtics are better. The problem is the Nuggets are just much more likely to do that because their best player, the MVP, is a guy who controls the pace and flow of the game from the opening tip to the final buzzer. And the Celtics, their supporting cast is better, but they just don't have a guy. Tatum isn't that guy yet. I don't know that he's ever going to be. And so that's where you start to say, how do these teams match up? But I mean, the last finals, the Celtics had more talent than the Warriors at that point. And experience and calm and transcendence from Steph Curry were the difference. Jokic is capable of that same kind of transcendence. And how could you not be worried about what a finals matchup would look like?
Yeah, I think that's the fear, is that you're just kind of watching the same movie where, the Celtics that second half of the year were just juggernauts and obviously carried it into the playoffs. But when those moments got a little tight, they just weren't quite ready for it. I think we all thought maybe they had turned the corner a little bit there. And just, I don't know, I don't want to overact to 2 games, but you see some of the familiar things. You even mentioned the bench. I think Tillman has a real chance to be like a nice little curveball, defensive versatility. I don't know how much you want to run that Horford-Tillman lineup. It was not very good last night, at least against that team. But I love that he can come in and guard Jokic. He can guard Murray. He can move his feet. Offensively, very rough, which is like going to be part of the issue. The bench didn't score a lot. But I need Peyton Pritchard to be a little bit better in those moments. Sam Hauser knocked down a couple threes, but he was only out there for probably 10 minutes. Al, I think we know he's going to go up in the postseason, but last night was one of those games where usually in the regular season, he turns it up a little bit, and I don't know, no one had an answer for that. So just, I need to see some of those old habits that we thought were making progress, just sort of short up a little bit. Before I dive into the really optimistic stuff, let's get into Jaylen Brown. Just like, he has been so good out of the All-Star break. And I think it really goes back to before the All-Star. Like he went and he did the dunk contest, rare that anyone even wants to do that at this point. Was almost MVP of the game. Tatum was out there, trying to kind of help him get to that potential award. And then you got just absolutely dominant, both from the Warriors game to last night. You can sense his frustration afterward that he played that good in that game and they did not get to the finish line of a win. And like you said, you kind of get the sense that he wants to be more involved there. But where you at with Jaylen? Does this surprise you at all? Like, I feel like he's re-steamrolling towards an all NBA berth, which I think at various points of the season, people might have been like, I don't know. It's obviously aided by the Celtics' success, but is Jaylen showing you anything in this little stretch?
Absolutely. I mean, not just this stretch, really all season. I think he's having a better year this year than last year. The numbers aren't going to be the same because he's given up a little like everybody else has, but he's much more secure with the ball. Free throws are obviously an issue last night. He's become a better passer, somebody where he's not. Tatum made a bunch of forces last night, and that was typically what you used to see from Brown a lot, these passes into traffic, where you're like, what are you looking at? And yes, there's still some of that, but he's much better there. And the other thing, I don't think you can discount the fact that he got the contract. And so you're not playing for that anymore. You don't have to worry, I need to be all NBA because that's how I get paid. No, you earned it. You got it. You're calm and content with that. And it's great to see because those contracts can go in one of two directions. You get it, and then you kind of let off the gas, or you get it and you're relaxed and you say, I'm going to let my talent speak. And that's what he's doing. So I love everything I've seen from Jaylen Brown this year, and particularly last night against Denver, just the way that when nothing was really going right for them offensively, he was like, well, I'm working. And so, and he was not intimidated by the moment at all. And we've seen that in the postseason from him a lot of times. Going back to the Warriors series, he was the one guy who consistently showed up in those finals. So I am on board Jaylen Brown. And I've been a kind of a wishy-washy Jaylen Brown guy over the years. I thought he was a little too one-dimensional, but you look at the way he stepped up defensively. I mean, demanding to take Jokic, which I don't know how that would have worked out, but I like the fact that he is now embracing that role of, I'm going to guard Jimmy Butler, I'm going to guard Jan, whoever. Like, give me that guy. I like that from him a lot.
Yeah, even this week, Steph, Luka, like he's wanted that challenge. And like, look, his numbers were really, really good for the first, say, 40 games of the season defensively. I think he was number one in defensive field goal percentage, essentially like limiting opponents as low. And now that's come down a little bit, but because he's taking on the challenges of elite level players, I'm with you. I love that he comes out afterward. And at first I sort of did whoa, you want to guard Jokic, but then you think about it and you need someone who's strong. You need someone who has some like at least athletic ability to stay with him. It's not the worst idea. Like, I don't know how many times you could get away with it. But I more so love the idea that one of your star players is like, I want that. I want to find out a way to win. If that's how we're going to get to a title. And he's just been super refreshing. We can nitpick the free throws. That has always been a problem area for him. He needs to make those in a 6-point game. He can't be missing all those free throws, but I think he'd be the first to admit it. And I do like where he's at. All right, it's time for Fanatic Sportsbook storylines, and I got 3 of them for you that we are tracking, Tomase. Let's get this one out of the way. The MVP. I thought the odds would shift like dramatically after last night. I know Tatum was a long shot coming into that Denver game, but I just felt like if the Celtics had dominated that game, if Tatum had a big night, the narrative starts to shift a little bit, right? Like in terms of, okay, best player on the best team. Celtics have taken care of business against all these opponents. Right now, Jokic minus 170, far and away the leader in the clubhouse. SGA is the closest at plus 220. Luka at plus 700. Giannis at plus 1500. And Jayson Tatum, really not a lot of progress the last couple of weeks. He's still 5th at plus 1800. And yet, it's probably the right spot, right?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I look at somebody like SGA and even Luka, and yeah, they have incredible individual numbers, especially Luka for the all-around thing. But you watch games and you're like, I'd rather have Tatum than Doncic. And for SGA, all right, so he's had the big breakout with OKC and they're legit, but it's like Tatum's the best player on the best team and the team that's going to win 60-something games. I think that should count for something. I would have him higher. I would have him over Giannis. I would have him over Luka. I would have him over Gilgeous-Alexander. I would.
Ooh.
But they're all behind Jokic by a lot. Like that's based. So whatever, you're second or you're 10th, who cares? You're not winning it. Jokic showed why last night. He's the far and away the best player in the league. So I can't really get too worked up about arguing over whether Tatum should be second or 4th or 6th when there's a clear number 1 above everybody.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of coming down on it. Before I would spend a lot of time arguing like, oh, he's got to be in the top 3. Just ship the trophy to Denver. Like, we knew Jokic was going to probably win it this year. A lot of voters were remorseful for not giving it to him last year, but Embiid was great, and there's always this fatigue with a guy winning it. I mean, when you watch it live and in person, when you watch that a defender can't even leave his body because they are so worried that he's going to burn them in another way, or even if you separate for a little bit and then he still whips a blind alley-oop to the basket. He's so
You
good.
can't even box out your guy because
Yeah.
you got to be worried about the passing lanes. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, he's so good. And so just send that trophy out there. Everyone else, I mean, no one wants to battle for second place in the MVP voting. I am with you. Like, I think if I had a vote, I don't. I would probably have JT slotted third right now based on the team's success. I still probably lean a little bit when every time I turn on TV and watch SGA, I'm just blown away by how good he is. And given how young that team is and the success they've had, I think they should reward that. I do think there's going to be some conversation about exactly how that lands. I'm with you on the Luka thing. Like, I love Luka. It's mesmerized. I always watch the games, but I don't know. There's a lot of possessions he's eating up, and there's just not enough wins out there. And Giannis too. Like, he's always going to be great. The team isn't successful enough for me to necessarily be putting him in ahead of Tatum at this point. Let's kick it over to Coach of the Year. I thought this was interesting. Joe Mazzulla, for the longest time, was lingering way back in the pack. He's climbed to essentially tied for second place in the odds. So we got Mark Daignault, pride of Leominster, at number one, best odds, minus 200 with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Chris Finch in Minnesota at plus 350, and Joe's right there as well at plus 350. Is there any roadmap to Mazzulla sneaking in and stealing that away? And it's stealing, it sounds weird, but he was like in the plus thousands a couple weeks ago, and it felt like, how is he lingering so far back when the Celtics are so far ahead of the pack?
Yeah, I think people will just say talent. It's like every sport. If you have the most talent, you're not winning Coach of the Year. That's just how it goes. Whether it's baseball, basketball, does not matter. You look at OKC, such a young team. You weren't sure how all the pieces were going to fit, and they're already playing like a legitimate title contender, or at least a threat in the West. It's sort of like I have a hard time arguing second or third. You can't justify Missoula winning, even if they win 65 games, just because the talent they've built. It's a credit to Brad Stevens. He cost his coach the Coach of the Year award by building such a good team and amassing so much talent. You're not going to win with this roster.
Well, it's interesting because the media does not vote on Executive of the Year. That's a peer voted award, but that can also be sent directly to the Auerbach Center because we know who is almost certainly walking away with that. Last one for you. Championship odds. And this is the one that I was really intrigued by because I thought for sure coming off of last night, we'd see maybe a little bit of a shift, that if you were heavy on Boston's the team, that maybe would come back to earth a little bit. Celtics still favored and pretty, like, I don't know. I don't want to say decidedly, but like plus 220 for the Celtics. Denver's down at plus 400. Clippers are at plus 460. So essentially, like, there's not a lot of separation between Denver and the Clippers when, in my mind, there's a huge separation between those two teams. You got Milwaukee at plus 700 and OKC at plus 1800. So there's a huge drop off. Essentially, the top two are the veteran teams in each conference, and then everyone else is kind of like on the periphery. Any surprise that the Celtics are still the favorite to win the title based on the two matchups with the Nuggets?
No, just because as a season-long thing, the Celtics have had a better overall season than the Nuggets. Certainly Denver's turned it on when they faced Boston, but you just go back a couple nights earlier, Denver was coming off a lousy loss of its own against Phoenix, So I think if you take the totality of the play of both teams, I get it. The Celtics also have an easier path out of the East, I would say. Milwaukee, I'm sorry, doesn't scare me. And the Knicks are banged up. The Cavs, I mean, okay. Miami, I guess, is always lurking. But then you name those teams out west, and still in play-in like area, you still have Lakers, Warriors, Mavs, like all of those teams at the bottom. And obviously, you mentioned the ones at the top. You didn't even mention Minnesota. I don't know where they are in that list. So yeah, so you're gonna have a lot more competition just to make the finals out of the West. Whereas I think, don't hold me to this, but the Celtics seem to have a much easier path out of the East.
Yeah, I think the only figure you start looking at is like, where does Miami end up? Where does who's going to slide down into that play-in potential area, and do you draw a tougher first round matchup? But again, like, nothing about the way that the East has played out this year should scare the Celtics. Like, I'll just keep saying it. I'm going to start searching hotels. People are going to get mad at me for saying this because, like, they're going to think I'm going to jinx it if I say that I'm going to start searching hotels in Denver in June. I don't know the dates yet, people. We don't know for sure
just book
what's going to happen. Yeah, I'm just doing it like an advanced scout on hotels and breweries and stuff like that. I will put in some diligence just to be ready in case that moment comes along. I'm pretty sure it's coming. Let's finish on this. What do you need to see these last 20 games? Is there anything that like I said, I don't think there's anything they can show beyond showing well against Milwaukee. I just can't get revved up for a double dip with Atlanta and Portland and Utah. And like, is there anything you need to see from this team that would make you feel even a little bit better going into the postseason?
Yeah, win a game at the end, win a game on the last possession. They're due, and win it in a way that's not Tatum pounding the ball. Just to bring it back to kind of the theme of this whole podcast, bring it back to winning a game where it's in the flow of your actual offense. That's what I want to see. Give Tatum the confidence that if he gives it up, someone else is going to win the game. I think that unlocks a lot for them. So I would love to see Jrue Holiday win a game with a corner three. I would love to see Porzingis roll to the basket and win a game. Derek White, whatever it is, somebody other than Tatum take the last shot and make it. And that, I think, is how you get to the next level with this Celtics team.
I think I take it one step further. I'd say like a couple of those games with somebody, each night is somebody different. And I think what you're right. Like if the first night they finally get one of these to drop and it's Derek White coming off a Porzingis screen and whipping it to Jrue in the corner, and like Jayson and Jaylen are just sitting there watching. Now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that's no slight on them because they draw attention away from those guys. But I think it would make it easier for everybody to embrace the notion of this is how they play and have success for 47 minutes and 30 seconds of every game. Let's do this on the final possession and find a way to get there. Other than that, it sounds so weird, but stay healthy. They're going to rest a lot of guys down the stretch. Build some confidence back up, blow the doors on some teams, finish with they get a chance here to finish with the best offensive rating in NBA history, probably one of the best net ratings, which will slot you alongside some of the best teams like the 96 Bulls and 2015 Warriors, all these things. I don't know how much that matters. We're so focused on the having to end on the last prize that it feels weird to even monitor those things. But I got to fill up pregame shows, John Tomase, and so we will monitor that along the way. Thank you for being level-headed in this discussion. Not that I thought you would be going off the rails, but if you go on Twitter now, this team can't lose a game without people losing their minds.
Yeah, you know what, Chris? I'm here to save my bombs for the Red Sox, and I can be more reasonable about all the other teams.
Do we have a opening day starter yet? Do they like?
Brian Bayo's $55 million richer, so probably him.
At least that's something I can get partially excited about. But I'll save that topic when I come on the Red Sox. After we get done a duck boat parade, I'll come on the Red Sox podcast and show you how little I know about Boston baseball. John Tomase, thank you so much for your time.
You got it.